I'm in a good mood. It's Thursday. I've had a great week. How about you, Brian?
It has been a good week. It's been a good week. I was out at IT Nation last week, so it's nice just to be back and back into the regular groove.
Yeah, and my great week, I wish I could say it was work related. I mean, I've had a great week at work too, don't get me wrong, but I have had so much fun after hours preparing for Dungeons and Dragons tomorrow night. Uh we have a lot going on tomorrow. Two two people died last session, and I'm pretty sure many more are going to die this session. It's going to be terrible and so much fun all at the same time. So
Well,
I'm pumped
awesome. You
about that.
enjoy that.
Yeah, I know. I'm a big nerd. It happens. So, all right. So there's just a few people here. I recognize one or two of them for sure. I'm not sure. Have all of you been a guest on, or not a guest, or a person? Have you guys come to one of my webinars in the past? Yes. Words are hard. Feel free to pop something in the chat, guys. We're gonna have this be really conversational today, okay? So I'm gonna be chatting with Brian. I'm gonna watch the webinar chat. So if you guys have questions, comments, want to chime in, you want to troll me, whatever, pop it into the chat. And if it's something I think we should bring attention to, then we will. Now, what I'd like to do is just first go over kind of the loose agenda for today. So we're going to start. I'm going to introduce you guys formally to Brian. We're going to talk about ourselves a little bit, not to sell our products, but we're going to just let you guys know who we are and what we're about, so that way we can establish a little bit of credibility, if you will. And while we do that, I'm going to launch a poll. I'd love if you guys could let us get to know you a little better. It's going to have questions like if you're running QBRs today, that kind of stuff. It'll help Brian and I know how we want to maneuver through our conversation today. So we're going to talk a lot about QBRs. We're going to talk about turning stale, possibly boring QBRs into something that's going to drive sales for your MSP. Now, don't get me wrong. I would say a QBR is definitely a sales tool, but that's not the only thing it's for, right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest worry is it becoming a thinly veiled sales call as opposed to something of
Yeah.
value for the client. So we'll definitely touch upon ways to make sure that you're bringing the right conversation to your customer and not falling into that trap.
Yeah. So you guys already heard I am a D&D nerd. I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons tomorrow night. It is actually a small group at my church, and it's a blast. So I'm doing that. You see, I've got the guitar behind me. I got the drums behind me. So I'm kind of all over the place personally. And then I also ran an MSP for over 10 years. So I also know your struggles as as an MSP or a former MSP owner. Brian, how about you, man?
Yeah, so in a similar vein, I was an MSP owner and operator for about 15 years of my career, probably been in the MSP space about 20 now. I did a little time as a hired gun as well at a mid-market MSP. And those things really gave me the opportunity to see how both the SMB and the enterprise operate, which is really was really nice. In terms of personal life, I think you can look over my shoulder and see there's quite a few artifacts back there. Huge New York sports fan, huge Dallas sports fan. There's ties in my family in both places, so that's where I like to spend some of my downtime, especially now when it's cold up here in the Northeast. There's nothing better than a Sunday just watching football end to end.
I once watched sports, and I'm not a sports guy. I went to a hockey game last week though, and it was a blast.
Going to live sports, there's nothing better. It's a
It was
different energy.
now now if I'm going to be honest though, you know why it was a blast? It was at, I will forever call it the Gund Arena. It was at the Rocket Mortgage Quicken Loans Fieldhouse of Doom, or Rocket Arena for short, where the Cleveland Cavaliers play. But we went to watch a Cleveland Monsters, I think that's their name, game.
Could be.
And it was a Friday, and every Friday is 3-2-1 night. So it was $3 Bud Light beer, $2 hot dogs, and I don't even know it was $1. I didn't care. Like I was happy with beer and hot dogs. So
Good stuff.
normally, just so we're on the same page, normally a beer there is $16, and it's a 20 ounce. So I was getting a 12 ounce for $3.
That's
So
a good
I
deal.
mean,
That's a
if
good
I
deal,
planned
especially
on
in a
spending
sporting event now.
16, should I have bought five beers would have still saved me money.
Hey, you can, $3 a beer. You got to look at that and take advantage of it. There's very few places you can get a beer for $3 now.
So true. All right. So, people have started filling out that little poll. So we have a few MSPs, we have a few vendors, we have an other. Ooh, I would love to know if you're willing to share what are you other? Um, that sounds fun. And then we've got some owners, we've got some technical leaders, we've got finance, sales, marketing. So we've got all sorts of people here today. Oh, customer success. It's Janessa, of course.
I got to correct Janessa now. So Janessa is one of our customer success folks, and that makes you a vendor, Janessa.
It does. It does. You are a vendor to MSPs. All right. So
You have other customer success on the call, and that's great because obviously the role of vCIO is interpreted in many different ways across many MSPs, right? And certainly at the core of it, and what we're seeing becoming the more common term, and the QBR kind of folding under it, is that customer success role.
So a couple people said that they run QBRs consistently and have a defined process. So that's great. Hopefully, my hope, my goal is that you will still find something valuable here, or maybe just like a nice reminder of why you're doing it the way you're doing it at the very least. Several people said, yes, we do QBRs, but not consistently. It's irregular or it depends on the client. One person said, we don't do any type of business reviews today. Thankfully, nobody said we do them, but honestly, we do a terrible job. So thankfully, nobody said that. Or maybe nobody is self-aware enough to be honest. Ooh. No, I'm
I think
kidding,
if we look at
guys.
some of the challenges, you might find where people are struggling and maybe do feel that way a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of challenges, the biggest challenge that people are feeling is that clients don't understand what they're presenting, and maybe there's just like too much data. But most of the other challenges had at least one person. So clients seem bored, disengaged, impatient. We don't connect IT work to business priorities well. We struggle with follow through or accountability between QBRs. Nobody said clients don't buy the recommendations we present. So that's good. At least you guys are selling some stuff. All right, so I feel like we should talk about the biggest reason QBRs have become so stale for MSPs. What do you think that is, Brian?
I think it is because they don't change, the conversation doesn't get changed up, and very, very quickly it can feel all too familiar, and the value drops right out of the bottom of the experience for the end user, right? Because it's the old, I'll go back to when I was an MSP. I started out with, a lot of hard data facts. I brought a lot of the reports, created those documents that had incredible thud factor. But the reality is, once you explain them to the customer the first time, first meeting, it was like, cool, we've never seen this data before, really interesting. Second meeting, they're like, cool, we're still tracking well. Third meeting turned into, yeah, I've seen this before. What's in it for me, right? And that was
Yeah.
really kind of the attitude that came up. And as an MSP who's probably tried every version of QBR before deciding to build a platform ourselves, when I really look at it, I saw that attention tended to wane over time, and we needed to really shift the narrative. Too much I was going out as an MSP trying to validate what we do for the customer, to avoid what I'll go call the curse of the great MSP, which is the more we automate, the more we do remotely, the less we're on site, less things break. And now the customer kind of looks and goes, why are we paying these guys so much? We don't see them as often. Things aren't breaking as much as they used to. And when that happens, you can really run into that. I gotta stand behind and prove my value, right? But then when improving that value, you show it these data parts, and what you're not taking into account is that person across the table tends to be a general business person in most of our relationships, outside of the co-managed ones, and they really just want to know, how am I going to get better? Am I safe? What can I
Mm.
do to become more efficient using technology? And these outcomes that they're desiring often are not being attended to in in the QBR, and that's really what we got to work on as a community.
All right. And you said they want to know certain things, am I safe? They probably want to know, all right, if I keep growing, are my businesses going to, or businesses, are my systems going to scale? And I don't know, like when like the first, I don't even know how many years when I was running my MSP, I kept going back and forth, Brian, between how could they not know this information already? And then the other complete, opposite, these idiots don't know anything. I have to do so much hand holding. Like they don't even know what systems they're using, let alone if they'll scale.
Yeah.
So what do you think the actual truth is? Because I don't think it's usually one of the polar opposites.
So I always found, first thing is everybody knows the lane they know really well, right? I joke around, I know about three things in life, real deep. Ask me those, I
Mhm.
can give you an opinion, and anything outside of there, I'll find you the right expert, right? That's kind of how I look at things. And when you take the questions you talked about, I think almost every business owner has enough intuitive and understanding of their business to go, am I safe? But believe it or not, most of them don't understand the concept of scale, not necessarily from a human resources or financial position, but from a technology position, right? They can't even comprehend what needs to happen to scale. But before even putting the cart before the horse on, scaling, it starts very simply with, what are their goals? What is it they're even trying to do here as a business? And that's an area where I see, especially with some of the junior, vCIOs that are going out doing QBRs, they're not spending enough time really digging into the customer, understanding what it is they provide, who is the market that they serve, and really what are the key initiatives they're going after and the obstacles that they're facing on the way to success. Because in there lies all the drivers you need to really get things done.
Like that. Now, you say that they don't even know what scale truly means. And I think you make a good point. So, I'll peel the curtain back a little bit. We started using Airtable to manage some of our marketing stuff. And then we started finding more creative ways to use Airtable. And if you guys don't know what Airtable is, it's like a glorified internet, cloud hosted database. So it's like Excel on steroids. It's probably more like Access if you guys have ever played with that, right? But anyway, it's a database, okay? So um fast forward 6, 7 months, and now we've got over 100,000 records in Airtable. And if I like just go to create a new record, sometimes I'm waiting 8, 9 seconds for the screen to just stop having the little circle spinning. And like that is the, like, in my opinion, that's the definition of my system can't scale, right? So how how an MSP should think about this, in my opinion, is, they should be looking at the platforms their clients are using and saying, all right, well, what if we fast forward 5 years and we just keep using this and we just keep adding more data? What's going to happen to this system? Can the system support that? And hopefully they're not using Airtable and trying to store hundreds of thousands of records, because I don't think that's what it's designed for. But, you probably have clients using medical billing software or uh, time tracking software for their law firm, or maybe they've got some kind of project management software for their marketing agency, right? So there's all these different platforms that your clients could be using. And, so is it self-hosted, cloud hosted? Is it local? Is it central? There's a lot of different things that if you want to think really super technically in the weeds, you could start to like worry about. But Brian, is that what we should be worrying about when we're thinking about these QBRs?
Well, we should be worrying about that as the folks that support our customer. Our
Mhm.
customers should not be worrying about that necessarily, because we should be guiding them through a process of really connecting the dots between that technology and the goals and challenges that they're trying to overcome or attain, and really help them translate what that means without it going so deep in the weeds, right? Because the one thing that I've seen repeatedly on our QBR journey is the deeper we got in the weeds, the less the customer wanted to engage. And the
Mhm.
more we made it about them and the more we put things into simple business speak that they could understand, the faster things happened. And the less we had to sell, the more they were drawing a conclusion. And, that's kind of my short little kind of stop speech, if you will, about what the QBR should be. It really needs to be about them, not you.
So I'll throw out a Hail Mary, okay?
Yep.
In the chat, do you guys have a client that has, I'm going to call it a problem, but it could be just something that they're not even thinking about yet, right? A problem of scale. Or it could be they've got a 13-year-old server that they built a wall in front of and nobody knows how to get to it. It hosts something important and you don't even know how to reboot it, let alone replace it. So pop in the chat. Do you have a problem right now with a client that you want a solution to? Maybe we can brainstorm with you. No shade, no shame. Uh, I got jokes, but I promise I won't mock you.
And
um,
a little of what you're saying there, Steve, gets into kind of what the VCIO role is, or at least, the customer success role is. And it's having a pulse on what troubles the customer, right? And really trying to understand, where they're feeling pain, but then you be the one kind of like a translator who can help them identify the why. But I see Janessa's got something to share here.
yeah. So yeah, we'll wait and see what she has to say. I know there's going to be a moment between her typing and pressing enter and us seeing it. While she does that, Brian, when you think about translating this stuff, so let's look at my Airtable problem, right?
Yep.
So we've got Airtable doing a multitude of things, and what what I was able to say is, hey, so we've got these different platforms we're using for different reasons, and we've got various problems across all the platforms. What if we moved to this one big, awesome platform? It maybe rhymes with Bubflot and HubSpot. What if we move to this thing? Um, Obviously, it's going to cost a lot of money to do, right?
Yep.
But the results we're going to see are going to be a lot better because we're going to have clearer access to data, and because we're data nerds, in marketing or in sales, Brian, because you have a SaaS platform. Um, it's important for you to be able to track, like, how many people did this email go out to, how many opened it, how many clicked, how many signed up, and like that's a funnel, right? So you need to be able to accurately view the funnel. And if your if your systems don't give you clear visibility into that funnel because maybe your systems are kind of dispersed and not connected, um, sometimes an upgrade, while more costly, is going to give you a huge advantage compared to what you used to have. So once we started looking into that and having that conversation of what more can this platform do for us that we don't have access to today, it was a no-brainer. But it didn't like it wasn't going to serve us any good having a conversation about price because obviously we're spending more. And it wasn't going to necessarily do us any good to say, oh, but it supports 374,000 databases. Nobody cares. Like, does it work? Is it fast? And are we going to get access to more data and information than we used to have? Is it going to be better for us overall? And can it continue to scale? Because I don't want to do this again in 12 months.
It's driving efficiency, right? So when you look at what the QBR role is, it's to understand, or what the QBR can do is it's an opportunity for you and your customer to have very frank conversations, right? You want to understand, where they're feeling challenge, where they're feeling pain. And from an MSP perspective, and as this role continues to evolve, the vCIO role, the more advisory type role that the MSPs are taking on, you have to have a working knowledge of some of the applications they have, even if you're not directly supporting them, because not everybody will take on that HubSpot challenge as a direct, supported object, but they certainly have some insight into it. And that's where you can be a good steward and help your customer make those decisions by asking the questions they wouldn't otherwise ask to that vendor, right? And be able to understand those questions like you talk about scale, Steve. Hey, if we go to this, forget about the money side of it. How far can I take this thing? Is it going to sustain the growth that's being projected by this company for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? Because in most cases, when folks make a major application change like an ERP or a CRM, they want to do it once and they don't want to do it again for 10 years because so many other business processes fall off of that decision, right? And those are the things that we want to talk about, with our customers as we're entering into our QBRs, so then we can tailor our future meetings, especially after the first, to the type of questions that they want to have answered. It goes back to the old sales adage, you got one mouth, two ears, use them in that order.
Mhm. I like that. I like that. All right. So Janessa has a question and Jack also has a question. So I like this.
Yeah, we've got a few questions in here, which is great.
Yeah, I like this. This is great. So Janessa says, I have a client who seems moderately engaged, but has missed a few meetings. How can I encourage them to stay more engaged and keep the communication going?
So sometimes it's just being honest, right? One of the things that I see that vCIOs don't want to do is kind of step outside the box of a process that's been defined for them. But you need to do just human things, right? Hey, Steve, you haven't been at the last couple of meetings, or we've postponed the last couple of meetings. How can I make that experience better for you? What is
Mm-hmm.
it that you'd like to understand more of in those meetings? I know that you've said, hey, you guys are doing a good job. I don't think we need to meet, but this isn't about what job we're doing. It's about, are we in alignment with what you're trying to do? And are we
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we're planning accordingly for the future? And just be open to the customer. And some of them may look, you may get the 1 out of 10 that does say, I just don't care. And that's okay.
Right.
That might be a customer you decide 2 years from now shouldn't be in your roster any longer either when we talk about firing clients, right? But if they're missing a couple meetings, find out first, hey, is it a business pressure that they're feeling? And that's why they've had to miss the meetings. But if they answer to you that you guys are doing great, we don't need to do anymore, or I don't think there's anything new that we need to talk about, that's where you got to step in and really say to them, this isn't necessarily about new or that the condition that we're doing, but it's making sure that we don't get out of alignment on what you see for the future of your company to be. And we also want to make sure that we're helping you build a budget plan that meets the way that you can relate that budget plan, and that there's not going to be any risk creeping in that you don't know about that we need to attend to sooner. For me, a big part of the budget process, of course, I wanted to sell deals. Of course, I wanted to bring that revenue in. But really, the art form was building a balanced budget, working with the customer CFO. So, my A priority might be the one that has the biggest bang for me, but they might not be able to fund it this year. How do we move that to
Mm-hmm.
next year, but take on other tasks that we can fund this year? And the biggest thing we're trying to do too, in this process is make sure none of those gotcha moments happen where you're looking at the customer at the 11th hour and going, hey, Windows 10 is expiring in a month. We got to buy 50 PCs. Nobody wants to hear that. So the real reason for the cadence is staying engaged and understanding, is anything shifting, changing? The meeting doesn't have to be a full hour if 30 minutes will do. But in many cases, once you start talking about those challenges, then the problem becomes, can we contain it to an hour, right? And those kind of
Right.
guardrails become the challenge. But, again, to get engaged with the customer, you just got to ask them, what do you want? Very bluntly, what is this experience missing for you? What would you like to see?
Perfect. All right. So Jack says he's the new director of client experience. He's leading a new push to do QBRs. Kudos, Jack. I appreciate that. His challenge is a lack of interest from them. I assume he means the client to connect with him and review. Do you have any suggestions on what value to suggest to them in utilizing the QBR? Do you
Yeah, I
think
mean,
there's anything in addition to what you just said?
I think, it's in Jack, without knowing how you presented this, if it was, simply, hey, one of the things that we want to do is have a QBR with you where we can share some of the things that are changing in the industry, let's say. Give them more. I go back to that statement, it's all about them, right? So the way I might position it is, one of the things that we're trying to do here at XYZ company is grow closer to our customers and be a better partner to you by better understanding where you're trying to go. And you'll hear that common theme from me today, right? Because where
Hmm.
they go is where we're going to align all of our conversation. It's important that we have an understanding of what your end game is, so we don't pitch to you technology just for the sake of technology. We want to make sure anything that we're doing with you is aligned, can be aligned. And certainly we want to look at if you're maximizing the use of the technology you have today. Oftentimes we can make you more efficient, more productive in your business if we understand what those challenges are by using technology that lives today. And I'll throw Office 365 as a great example of that, right? There's 100 different tools in Office 365 we can leverage, and the customer's likely already paying for most of them. Can we find ways that we can integrate other components, the SharePoint components, the team components, deeper into their environment? So, in short form, Jack, it's really, hey, where do you want to go with your business? We want to make sure that we're maximizing the IT that you have today to meet those needs first and foremost. And then we want to make sure that if we're pitching any technology, it's in alignment with what your vision is. And we're not just giving you the hottest new toy that's come out, and saying that you need it, because oftentimes you might not.
And I think, obviously Brian hit the nail on the head. This is his bread and butter. He could talk about doing QBRs all day long, right? Um, but what I'm curious, so there's a lot of different personality types, Brian. So, me, I am outgoing. I'm probably more jokey than most. So like, would you say that my approach to how the QBR is run or how I'm discussing or what I'm discussing is fundamentally different than, and I have no idea what kind of person Jack is, but I'm going to think of a guy from church. His name is Chris. He is very quiet, reserved, shy, buttoned up. Like when he speaks, you don't hear him because he's that quiet. So like, do Chris and I pitch or present in this QBR differently because of our personalities? Is what we're pitching different, or is it just the words we're using and the way we're doing it because we're just fundamentally different? Does that make sense? Oh, I don't hear you. You're
I'm
muted.
sorry. No, that was my fault. I was muting myself as I was coughing for a moment.
Oh, okay.
But no, fundamentally, look, we all have our own personalities. We all have our own styles. We run these accelerators called ramp camps at vCIOToolbox that is really meant to take the process and customize it to the people on the team, right? It's more coaching, accountability, and training when we do it. And the reason I share that's not, a pitch. It's more about, you've got to adjust the process. I've always said with vCIOToolbox, what we're selling you is a process. The system just helps you organize all the data that you need to present and make it a repeatable process. So after you get
Mhm.
the baseline built, it becomes very easy to sustain that process long term. So, in doing that, you've really got to look at the individual and say, what are you comfortable with? But we have foundational tenets that you can bring to a meeting, and you can mix and match them too. It's not necessarily that every data point that we can capture in our system needs to be shared in all meetings. And that's when you can look at the personality type of the person sitting across the table from you and say, what's going to appeal most to them. You and I talked about this the other day, and you brought in your personal buying habits, which of course threw this whole idea out the table. But I always say, really, by and large, people buy for three reasons. They buy to save money for their organization, to make money for their organization, or reduce risk, right? And oftentimes that the person sitting across the table only represents one of those three pillars, right? So you're going to change your conversation based on what you know about that person. If they're really risk focused and that's what they're most concerned about, you're going to spend more time in your QBR talking about where the areas of risk are, what that exploitation might mean in terms of likelihood and probabilities of occurring, and then ultimately come to a game plan coming off of that. If they're looking to make money, you may look at your projects and position them a little bit differently from an efficiency standpoint. Hey, by doing these things, it's going to make your team more efficient, which then by byproduct, let's go back to your HubSpot example. By getting this tool in and they're not waiting for the dial to spin and they're actually able to do things in a more material manner, they can make 20 more calls a day. And that's going to equate to X amount of dollars, once you kind of hone in on what their metrics are there too. So you really got to adapt a little bit of your conversation based on the person. But what's not going away is it's all about them, right? And every one of those scenarios, I'm coming back to what's the thing that drives them and then match up and align up to that. And no matter what your personality is, Steve, you may do it a little bit more outgoing. Chris might be a little bit more quiet about that. You're still kind of playing to the same end game, but you're you, and you're going to position it you're going to present it the way that you're going to present it. I always tell people when I present to you in kind of a meeting format, like we always do kind of mock role plays at one point during the ramp camps. I always say, look, I'm going to present out to you, but don't parrot me back. Take that language, make it your own. Next week, come back and present to me. Yes, I expect certain things. You're going to say exactly like I said it because those are the core tenets, but then make the rest yourself because if you're not feeling comfortable doing it, you're not going to have any success at it either.
All right. So I see Jack had was it Jack?
Yeah.
No,
Well, I
yeah,
see
Jack
Sam's
has a
got a
question.
question
Well,
too. I don't want to overlook Sam's question. That's a little
yeah,
bit
so
higher in the chat.
yeah, so we're gonna get to Jack's question about vCIOToolbox toward the end when
Yep.
we do the AMA section. Sam, we're gonna get to your question in just a couple minutes. What we're gonna do right now is we're actually gonna pause for like 3 to 5 minutes. We're gonna do our little sponsored commercial break. Brian and I are each going to talk about our platforms, and then we're going to go right back into education. If you guys have questions about our platforms, we're going to have like 5-10 minutes at the end where we'll do AMA, and you can ask us about platforms. You can ask us more about QBRs. You can ask me why I'm left-handed and I play a backwards guitar, whatever you guys want to ask, okay? So with that said, Brian, could you please tell everybody about vCIOToolbox?
Sure. So vCIOToolbox is what we refer to as a unified account management and advisory platform. We have two core products in the vCIO platform. We have our OnPoint QBR product, which is really geared to the account manager, customer success, and vCIO roles and staying engaged with their customers, really looking more at day-to-day operations and security, and then ultimately getting to a roadmap. The other side of our platform is our Cybrance GRC platform. More and more of our customers are starting to build vCISO as a service programs, working with their customers to get compliance ready, working with their clients just to get better at being ready for cyber insurance audits. And our GRC side of the platform brings you the tools to do that. Our core GRC module has over 30 different frameworks. Think your NIST, HIPAA, ISOs, and others that you can use to do gap analysis, get ready for an audit, and collect evidence. Everything's highly collaborative with the customer. There is a front-end customer portal portal on both ends of the system that you can share and collect data into. And then we have the ability to do policy management. Think of all your different acceptable use, written information security policies, and even take those out to the end users for signature. Finally, we do have the ability to do some third-party risk management as well within the GRC. The goal, though, is to unify data where it belongs and get a single stream there. And that's the strategic plan, that's the risk process, and of course, that's the roadmap. So even if you have two different teams working in the platform, they're always building to a single stream of projects, timelines, and acceptance with their customers. So that's really kind of the high level overview. The QBR module really consists of being able to build out a strategic plan, conduct your gap analysis, manage your world like Microsoft and assets within the system, and then generate that roadmap so you can drive your customer to make well-informed decisions of yes with you.
That's amazing. So if any of you are interested in a conversation with Brian and the team at vCIOToolbox to see how they could help your MSP, I do have a poll up for another minute or so. And please answer that poll. It even has answers like, I'm just here for the education. I'm already a customer. That way he won't bug you. After this webinar, that's what you want. So like I said, I'll leave that up for another couple of minutes. So I am with Alternative Payments. So what we're talking about today is all about really improving the relationship that you have with each of your clients, because the more you're able to get involved with their business decisions, the more that means they know, like, and trust you, right? So you're going to want to sign up for vCIOToolbox, or at the very least, you're going to want to maybe develop a QBR plan, and you're going to start building how you do your QBRs out, because that is how you refine your service delivery. That's going to be how you increase your sales funnel, right? But what we do at Alternative Payments is we're going to help you think about refining the back end of your business, okay? So one, we're going to help you fix your client relationships too, because we give a customer portal to all of our partners. So if you sign up for Alternative Payments, you would have a portal that your clients can sign into. They can view all their invoices, and they can save payment information. They can pay invoices, set up auto pay, all the things that you would expect to be able to do from a modern billing portal. They can do it from ours. And it's beautiful, which means they'll actually use it. We also, because I said we're going to help you kind of clean up and develop processes for the business side of things, we're going to help you automate the entire accounts receivable process. So once you create your invoice in the PSA, we will send that invoice out to the customer. We'll mark it paid when they pay it. If you set up reminder emails, if they maybe forget to pay or they're late to pay, we'll do all of that. When we deposit the funds into your account, we will even, let's say they paid with a credit card and you absorbed those credit card fees, we'll even include those fees in the deposit. That way, when you download your bank data into QuickBooks, it just matches. So that's what I mean by automating the accounts receivable process. I know a lot of MSPs, they don't have a full-time accounting person, bookkeeper, receivables, whatever. A lot of time it's just the owner and an outsourced CPA or bookkeeper. And this is going to make it a lot easier for you to automate your accounts receivable. And then we're also going to help you improve your cash flow, which means you're going to get paid faster. Most MSPs get paid on average of 36, 37 days after they send the invoice. Our clients get paid in 8 days after they send the invoice on average, because our clients have 65 or something crazy high % of their clients set up auto pay. The last thing I want to throw out there is Brian mentioned that sometimes your clients, they like the idea of a project, but maybe the money just isn't there. And you don't want to be the bank, right? You don't want to have them go to the bank of Steve Taylor IT company. You want them to go to a bank and get credit there. So that way you get paid right away. Another thing we offer is it's kind of like a buy now, pay later service. So you can extend net 150, which is 5 months, to your clients. Basically, we are extending them credit. You get paid right away, and the client pays anywhere from, I want to say, like 3 to 8%. It's super low interest on the payments. So that is another lever you can pull to help yourself get some of these projects across the line when a client needs something, but maybe they just don't have it all right now. So that's alternative payments. I'm going to pop up a poll. If any of you are interested in a conversation, no strings, no harm, no foul. If it's not for you, great. I understand. But I think a conversation could be good if you experienced any of those issues. Okay. So commercials are done. We're going to dive right back into education now. I'm going to leave that poll up for a bit. All right. Where did we leave off? We've got a question from Sam. Sam wants to know what the layout of an engaging QBR or what their key points that you should try with each client.
All right. So, that's a great question because what you bring to the meeting is going to make the difference in how that meeting gets received and will you get invited back, right? In some respects. So in vCIOToolbox, we have a number of different categories that can be implemented into a QBR. We have KPIs, which is really the data sets that come in from the integrations that we have with various vendors. But we have the ability to customize that in our dashboard that we present to our customers. So we're really only bringing to them the points that matter. And we're turning off the points that are just noise and data that can just overwhelm them. So we make sure that we're just speaking to areas of concern. And we have dashboards that are around ticketing, around Microsoft licensing, around security awareness and training and who the risky users are, around vulnerability. So you can really tell a story of where the pain points might be for a customer. And you can, even if you're not using a system, like I said earlier, we're helping you build a process and then helping you organize it. But I did it with PowerPoints and spreadsheets once upon a time in my life too. And these are the kinds of things that you can kind of include in those realms if that's the direction you're in today. The second thing is that strategic plan. I've mentioned it a few different times in a few different manners today, but really getting inside the head of the customer and understanding it. When we build a strategic plan inside of vCIOToolbox to share with our customers, it's really focused on 4 objectives. First one is being a better partner to that customer by better understanding where they're trying to go with their business, whether it's technology related or not, because oftentimes technology influences those things that the customer doesn't think are part of the technology story. The second thing is making sure we don't fall in the commodity trap. It's our job to bring the IT goals to the client. So this is where we want to showcase our leadership and make sure that they know that we understand on their behalf what they need to do within their environment. The third primary objective for building the strategic plan now is about creating a check and balance system. From your customer's perspective, when you now align your projects to these goals and you can show that relationship, you're telling them the story of why they need to do these projects, and you're putting them in control of the decision. It's more informed. They have more information that they helped themselves contribute, and that helps drive them to that answer. And then finally, we use the strategic plan to track progress as projects get adopted and then ultimately implemented. We're able to scorecard that out and really help a customer understand that so they can measure the outcomes that they were expecting and ensure that they felt some of that improvement within their business. From there, we go into the more tactical things. We do gap assessments, so you get a scorecard, and I think everybody should have a scorecard of some sort in their QBR. That red, green, and yellow type traffic light approach to how things are operating inside their environment. Asset management, I don't like going so deep into, everything, but you want to know what warranties have expired and what machines are over a certain age and make sure the customer knows that those are the areas that they need to take action. And then ultimately, this all leads to a roadmap where you're giving a customer a 2 to 5 year picture, depending on what your appetite is for that, where you're showing the whole budget existing contracts, existing services that are still upcoming and being billed to the future, as well as your projects. And if you tie those things together with a narrative that, again, goes back to that strategic plan and outcomes, you should see a reduction. Our customers see on average a 30 to 60-day reduction in the time to close those projects, to get the initial adoption to close, because there's less sales friction. They don't feel like they're being sold to. They feel like they're drawing a conclusion. And however you arrive to that, that's really where you want to get your customer in the position of where they feel totally in charge of their decision and they're not just taking us on blind faith and trust. So hopefully that answers the question for you, Sam, in terms of content and how you can lay it out. And then, of course, vary it to your own personality from there.
So how would you follow up after QBR? Like how soon after do you do it? Do you have like a cadence you run through?
Yeah, so the cadence is simple, right? You're going to determine your frequency of QBRs first and foremost based on the size and scope of your customer. Not all customers in any of our list of clients is created equal, right? We all have smaller customers, we have larger customers. And you have to be respectful of the customer's time as well. If you've got a smaller customer and there's not a lot of changes, they're pretty static in their environment, you only want to do this 1 or 2 times a year or is going to fall soft. But that doesn't mean you do it 1 or 2 times a year and now you're done. You do have to have a sequence of follow-ups. So one of the things that we have the capability to do in our system is capture any action items. So let's assume our customers adopted a couple projects. We now have to determine when we're going to sequence them and get final contracts and proposals. Depending on the timelines, that's going to drive when that happens. What I mean is, if it's an immediate action project, yeah, I'm going to get them out a proposal right away, right, and work to gain acceptance like I would with any sales opportunity. But what if they're saying yes to a project in principle that isn't due for 6 more months? Well, then I've got to set a follow-up 3 to 4 months out to kind of kick off that proposal process. Now, other action items that are going to come out of the meeting are things that you need to take care of them right away. You know, it might be tickets, might be other, small asks, information on HubSpot, if that's the Airtable HubSpot conversion, and you can work with the customers with it. But now I want to go into that QBR that really doesn't have action items, right? And now we've come out of that meeting and we need to stay engaged in the long term. And that's where we like the process of it at a bare minimum. I mean, look, always pick up the phone, but have something of value to say. If I picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Steve, just want to follow up from our last QBR, any questions?" And Steve tells me no, I don't want to just hang up on the phone, right? Oh, well, great. That was an awesome conversation. I want to make sure that when I'm calling them, "Hey, Steve, I'm reaching out to you because I just wanted to make you aware of something going on in the industry. Here's a little something I thought might interest you based on our previous conversation." Engage them a little bit to open them up and then ask that question. And then from an automated standpoint, I would also kind of look at surveys, right? And when I say surveys, I'm not a big fan of surveying my customers for everything, but you got to take a pulse.
Mhm.
Even if you're doing ticket-based surveys today, I suggest that you do a separate survey tranche just to your key decision makers, influencers, and stakeholders. Because the reality is they're not the ones traditionally answering those surveys that go out with your tickets. Those are coming back from your end user community. I love ticket surveys. They give me good information on end user sentiment, how those folks feel, certainly get us in front of problems in real time, but they don't protect me from that curse of the great MSP I talked about earlier. You know, we can see everything wonderful with the end user community, but at the executive level, they're starting to question why they're paying so much because they're not seeing the activity they once saw. So those periodic surveys where you go out and maybe do a CSAT or a net promoter score, between meetings will help you get insight to see, is the relationship tracking like I'm seeing downstream, or am I starting to see some risk that's coming in that I need to get out in front of? Finally, I'll also say project follow-up surveys are critical, or project follow-up calls. I mean, we have a survey tool, but honestly, I would always do a call with the customer about a week after the project was delivered. And I want to confirm things like, "Hey, was our team, how did you feel about the timeliness of our project? Did we cause any kind of interference in your day, disrupt any business time? Were my engineers professional if they were on site or if they were working remotely? Is there anything outstanding?" Because I think many of you know projects finish, engineer says, "Yeah, I'm going to do this one other thing. I'm going to get to it remote." and then they get back to the office and they get assigned new tickets and they get busy and something falls through the crack. So you want to make sure you've got that feedback loop, especially post project, to make sure that if any of that's happened, you're getting out in front of it.
Excellent. Well, we got 10 minutes left, so we are going to hop into the AMA side of things. So if anybody has additional questions, whether they're about what we've been talking about with QBRs, you want to know all the secrets to running a great one, please pop them in. But if you have questions about vCIOToolbox or alternative payments, or anything else that you think Brian and I can answer, please pop them in there. So, Brian, I'm going to make sure to connect you with Sam. I'm not sure if he's still here, but we'll make sure you two connect. All right. So one person, Jack, wants to know if vCIOToolbox has a template for a basic MSP QBR. Like it has templates, right?
Yeah, we come so you can get out the gate tomorrow, but it's a beast. There's a lot to do in there too. So we give you the ability to customize anything that you'd like as well. And in terms of our templates, as I mentioned earlier, it's not one size fits all. We employ a concept of maturity levels where you'll assign a maturity level to a customer and it'll right size the assessment to meet their need and complexity. So absolutely. Our job is to get you out to market, but then give you the flexibility to customize based on, if you serve specific verticals or if you have some approach models that are unique to you that you want to bring in.
Perfect. Sam is here. Well, good. Sam, do you have any other questions that you would love Brian to help you with? We are here for you. Meanwhile, Brian, is there, I had a whole slew of questions and I think I asked 3 of them.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I think hopefully, I think the questions from the crowd is always the best, right? What they are interested in hearing about is better than us speculating. My closing statements to you is whether you use a tool like vCIOToolbox or you do it, through ad hoc tools, just make sure you're staying engaged with your customers. I didn't get gray hair because I didn't get surprises in my lifetime with my customers. And, if you're not staying engaged and getting some feedback, that there will definitely, you will get surprised someday where you lose a customer you weren't expecting to. And a lot of times that could have been prevented just by listening and hearing what their challenges are and getting more engaged with them. So I encourage you, if nothing else, get out there, see your clients if you aren't seeing more often than not, and don't let your help desk be the single point of contact for your customer, because that often happens as well.
Ooh. Please consider Conan the Hyborian Age. I don't know if I'm reading or I'm starting to feel really old because all the text in Zoom is really tiny these days. It's a gritty alternative to Dungeons and Dragons. Look, I just started playing Dungeons and Dragons like 14 months ago, okay? So I'm still trying to figure this one out. I don't know that I can figure another one out. And I would have to have more friends to play with. All right. So closing the loop. So you go through, you do your QBR, you kind of wrap everything up. How do you land the plane? Like you got to make an ask, right?
Yep. So, well, the ask, in my opinion, becomes part of the meeting, right? When you get to that roadmap part of the conversation, you're being very blunt. Hey, Mr. Customer, by doing this incident response project, it's going to help you with your efficiency challenge because we certainly don't want to be defining it at the time of the incident. And you're going through a period of high growth, new people being added, new locations, and all those have to be considered as part of the plan. Do you want to adopt this formally into your plan? And make those asks in real time, right? And if it's yes, great. And we've got that scheduled as something to do near term. Shall I get you a quote? And then, get that going if they don't have a quote, or go, hey, let's act upon the quote we have. But you got to be making those asks along the way during the meeting. In terms of closing it up, my action steps I always like is take the action items that they told you, update whatever your report's going to be to include those action items, and send them a final copy of the report. So everybody has what the final, this is kind of where we landed, conversation in their inbox before the next meeting. And then if you're using a system, at that point, you'll go through probably, if you're using vCIOToolbox, there's a closing process that'll lock the results, lock the history. That way you can go back to that at any time, but now allow you to move forward with the data that you've now implemented into the system and just make updates in your next meeting, making it a much more streamlined, much more repeatable process long term.
Perfect. All right. In a bullet point or narrative format.
Your reports for the wrap, I mean, usually I'm in bullet point format in terms of action items. I don't get too deep into that. The narrative should already be in that. In terms of updating the report, it's usually if they've adopted projects, I want to reflect those projects as adopted and then send them the final report so they know what's been adopted formally in the plan. Because obviously the report we may have used during the meeting, we do have a presentation side of our system that makes this very interactive. But if you're doing it in a report format, that report becomes obsolete the minute they say yes to anything, right? So we want to make sure for that period we get them an updated, hey, we agreed to these things. Here's the bullet points of action steps, and here's your final report for Q4. Now we roll that Q4 data into Q1, but we have that reference point for Q4 now documented.
And I just want to add, I have found that bullet points are always easier for people to scan as they are not ever actually reading your entire email or your document or whatever, right? Jack's been warned about getting in the weeds with numbers. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, don't get in the weeds with numbers. The deeper you go into KPI metrics, the less you're going to move the ball forward in meetings. But you have to address KPIs that could be causing negative impact within the client environment. That's why we've made all of our dashboards adjustable or configurable so you can really just highlight, hey, ticket load went up last period. That's something we should look at. Or, hey, Microsoft MFA users, we were at 100% last quarter. Now we're at 75. What happened? Who's new? Who's not implemented? Keep it to the points you want to make. And then we have a customer portal. They can come in and see all the numbers on their own time, but you don't want to bring that to the meeting because you will get lost.
Beautiful. All right. Well, hey, I just want to land the plane here with our webinar. So, Sam, Brian, or someone from his team will reach out to you. Everyone else who said you're interested in a conversation with vCIOToolbox or alternative payments, we'll reach out to you. Jack has one last question. How much upsell during the QBR, Sam?
If you set this up right, the upsell is just part of the natural process. So those upsell items would be things that are on your roadmap. You're going to explain the business benefit to them, based off of what you've captured in strategy or what you've captured as gaps in their environment. And it should just be a natural extension of the regular roadmap. Internally, we measure the upsell opportunity separately in our white space analysis because it is a subset of the overall roadmap. But from the client perspective, it's all one big old budget.
Yeah. So thank you, Brian. I feel like I've learned a lot. I think several people here have learned a lot. This has been fantastic.
Appreciate you having me on, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, a great QBR ends with clear next steps and accountability, right? So if you MSPs are still chasing invoicing or dealing with unpredictable revenue, those strategic plans are going to fall apart because you're not going to have time for it. So let us know if you are interested in alternative payments. Meanwhile, if you liked this content because you loved how educational it is, we have more coming up. Just next week. Oh my goodness, next week is already November 18th.
The holidays are here, my friend.
Oh, I feel like
25 is just about over.
So hey, next week I've got two. I'm meeting with Oli from True North Dynamics, and he and I both ran MSPs. That one's going to be what I'd do differently if I were starting an MSP today. And then on the 20th, which is Thursday, I've got Jennifer Bleem from MSP Sales Revolution, and she has 3 AI offers MSPs can sell this quarter. You're going to learn the offers. You're going to figure out how to sell it. There's no like sales pitch. I mean, we always want you to buy our stuff, right? But we really want you to learn something. That's why I do these. Okay. So I hope you guys got something really useful and valuable out of this. Brian, I appreciate you so much. And
Thank you,
we will
Steve,
catch
as
you guys
well.
at the next webinar.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care, guys.